Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, this is my review of the Academy Award nominated disaster film Twister. This is my first ever Patreon request review, requested, of course, by my good buddy and occasional collaborator, John, aka The Zero Cool. Check out his page, he's got a lot of good content on there. And John, one of these days we need to do another collaboration or two. And as for a couple of our past ones, I'm thinking of doing some thumbnails with them since I'm getting into the world of thumbnail editing. I already got a couple good ideas, especially for that Waterworld one. Now, this is a film I did see part of as a kid. I remember the opening scene, a couple of little beats of the movie, but I stopped watching, I think maybe not even before the hour mark. Why, I don't know. I don't know if it was just a movie that didn't grab me as a kid, which is weird considering this is a movie that's all about spectacle. Maybe it was the human drama of it. Maybe he was busy for another reason. I don't know. It was one of the few films that time I stopped watching like that. The other ones I remember I stopped watching were Harriet the Spy, which is one of the few times I did not fully watch a movie in the theaters as a kid. And the other, of course, being The Matrix. But that one you can kind of get with how cerebral its plot is. That as a kid, if it doesn't grab you, you stop watching. Because I stopped watching at the part where he takes the pill and comes out of the Matrix. But then again, it's also probably how that film was constructed, because I used to marathon watch Total Recall, no issue. But that one, it's more. Now, this film cost $92 million to produce, and it made $495 million, so that's a pretty good amount. And like I have with a lot of my collaborations with John, I actually went to the inflation calculator and checked to see what that would be equivalent to today. The budget would be the equivalent of 154 million $221,083.49. Got to throw that 49 cents in there. It's important. And the gross for that would be $829,776,481.84. See previous statement. So that's still a respectable one. I had a feeling it wasn't going to go over $1 billion, but that's still pretty good. And if you look at a lot of blockbusters, that's on the lower end for how much they cost now. So when you take inflation into account, the production cost of movies has stayed about the same across the board. Maybe going up just a little bit when they put more money behind it. But once your grosses start going over $1 billion, that's going to happen. I mean, look what happened when grosses started going over $1 million and then tens of millions. And then once we started grossing over $100 million. It's something you can look at when you look at the film history, that it's going to be a slow progression. Till we probably hit another big depression, then it'll probably go back down and then rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Now, the plot of this film is that it takes place in Oklahoma. We got our main characters played by Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton. They're both doctors that study tornadoes. Helen Hunt is Dr. Joanne Harding and Paxton is Dr. Bill Harding. They're a couple that are separated. They're trying to get divorced. Bill Paxton's character is trying to get her to sign the papers. She is not signing them, but she's being coy about it, like, oh, I thought I sent him. You forgot to sign this page. Oh, sorry. He is very insistent on it because he already has a new girlfriend, fiance now, and he wants to get married. But there's that thing, you got to get divorced officially in order to go on to the next step, or else you're a bigamist. And when he tells her that he wants to get married, her surprise, like, oh. You can tell she's genuinely surprised. She knew that they were going that way, but she didn't think that it was that, we got to get it signed. But as this is going on, he finds out that the project they were working on to try to study tornadoes in a way that no one has before, by actually going inside the tornado, has been completed. It's Dorothy. Nice little reference that even as a kid I got, because, I grew up watching The Wizard of Oz. And even as an adult, it's one of those references I love even more. It's a system to where a can would open, it'd send all these little sensors up into the tornado, and it would scan the inside and give a good idea. A lot of data you can collect that way. And the film is them trying to launch Dorothy, but there is a nature antagonist and a human antagonist. I think it goes without saying what the nature antagonist is. It's the tornadoes themselves, especially the one at the end, which is an F5. They might as well have gotten Brock Lesnar in a suit and had him be the tornado. F5! I'm sure somewhere there's probably going to be someone taking the footage from the end of the film and photoshopping Brock's face into it. Like that one face, he's like, Photoshop that into that'd be fun. Yeah, if I didn't already have a thumbnail, that'd probably be the thumbnail. And of course, the human antagonist is Dr. Jonas Miller, played beautifully by Carrie Elwes, which I got a little bit to say about him later. He designed something that is very similar to Dorothy, but a ripoff. But unlike them, where they're in it for the science, he's in it for the money. Which I do like the film, even though it doesn't go super in depth with it. I love that the film examines that, the two different types of scientists. The ones that are just there for the money, the prestige. They'll just talk to the cameras like, we're here for this, but they're just there for the money. And then the people who are there, who actually love the subject, they're there for the money's good, but they're also there for the knowledge. And you can apply that to any field. You can apply it to teaching, which the ones that are like Miller, it's like, why are you even teaching? You can apply it to film critics. You can apply it to scientists. You can apply it to my line of work, security, anything. It's always the same type of thing. In addition to Paxton's character wanting to get divorced, the other drama in there is that Hunt's character keeps pushing it a little too far as they try to get Dorothy launched. And part of her obsession with this is that a tornado killed her father when she was a kid. And that's the opening scene, the part of the film I remember, where the tornadoes come in, they got to get into the cellar, get their dog in, the lock starts breaking, Dad's holding it on, and then the door gets pulled off, and he gets pulled off into the tornado with him. Which apparently, that was a reshoot. Which I did not even know that watching it back. It didn't strike me as something that was reshot. You know how sometimes with films, there's something that obviously feels like a reshoot. Like, that feels a little different than the rest of the film. And then other ones are like, that was a reshoot? Wow. Yep, so it was a reshoot. I have it on the notes right here. That in the original cut, this is going to be a long-winded thing I'm going to be reading now. That instead of having that opening thing, every now and then, adult Joe, that's Helen Hunt, would be having these nightmare flashbacks of her traumatic experiences, and she'd see hallucinations of her dead father. And during one visit, he'd actually give her the strength to carry on and persevere. And these were cut by director de Bont because he felt they took away from the overall feel of the movie. But without them, he felt the film was missing something, so alas, we get the opening scene. And I have to say that's a wise decision because it just feels weird otherwise. I mean, unless they've made it obvious that it's all in her mind and not some supernatural thing, you really wouldn't get the vibe of, okay, you would think there's something supernatural, which of course would mean, is this ending tornado supernatural? Is it like a giant thing that actually is alive? One of those weird things. But of course, since it's missing something without it, they went and shot the prologue, which I think works a whole lot better. Of course, another thing is if they kept the original vision, then some audience members would probably be thinking, Joe, are you alright there? Are you off your meds again? Hello, Joe? Hello? Jan de Bont, he does a good job with the directing. And I've only ever seen one other of his films, and that's the original Speed, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. You can actually see it in the background right here. That's my original VHS copy that I used to marathon watch as a kid. I remember a few things about it, but it's on the to-watch list. And, of course, he followed that film up with this film, and then he followed this film up with Speed 2 Cruise Control, which I've yet to see, but I have never heard good things about it, so I'll probably do a back-to-back watch. And I might actually do a recording of some of my genuine thoughts watching the film. But, that's just throwing that out there. And then you follow that up with The Haunting, which I believe I do have somewhere in the back there, but not on hand where I can just pull it off. That's also on the to-watch list. And then the last film he's directed so far is Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life, which I saw the original Tomb Raider in theaters. I've never seen the sequel, but I hear it is a step down in most regards from the first one, but we'll see. I haven't even watched the reboot, so that should tell you. I haven't seen most of the video game movies. A lot of them I need to watch. I haven't seen Assassin's Creed, but then again, I haven't played a lot of the Assassin's Creed games. So, de Bont signed on to do this film about... De Bont, he films the film pretty well. The camera's set up nice, not too much shaky cam, which is a good thing considering this type of movie. You would expect certain shots too, but no, none. And how he films the scenes that involve a lot of special effects come out well, and the special effects, I'll talk about those in a bit. And he signed on to do this film right after he got off of working for 6 months plus on what would turn into the first American Godzilla film. I don't remember offhand which iteration that was, but I believe that is the one right before Roland Emmerich came on. So I think that's after the Griffin was dropped. Would have been interesting to see him direct it. You know, the action in that film would have been spectacular. The screenplay is credited to Michael Crichton, writer of classics like Jurassic Park, Eaters of the Dead, which he adapted into the 13th Warrior, and he took over the reshoots on that, which I'll talk about that one of these days. Now, he was presented the idea for this film in 1992 by his good buddy Spielberg, and him and his wife were paid $2.5 million to write the screenplay. But the funny thing is, their final draft is not what's fully used here, because they had script doctors come on, which IMDb doesn't list if the script doctors were just cleaning up dialogue, fixing some plot elements, as they had ideas while filming. But among the script doctors were Josh Whedon and Jeff Nathanson, and they were paid about $100,000 a week to be script doctors. Now, Whedon, this is around the time where he was called in for a lot of stat. He did some rewrites on Waterworld, which he defined as Weeks in Hell. And then, of course, a little bit after this, he'd be called in to write the screenplay for Alien Resurrection, which he has a lot of big thoughts on that one. And then after that is when I really think he got his big break with the Buffy TV series, Firefly, and then, of course, a lot of stuff later, and then the 2 Avengers films he did. Of course, now he's got that little flack, but I haven't really researched much of it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But I could see a little bit of Whedon in the final screenplay. I don't know why they were not credited as, like Michael Crichton, Josh Whedon in that, like that. My guess is probably some contractual issue. I mean, they were brought on as script doctors, so that probably is why, because I don't think script doctors get credited that often. If they did, Carrie Fisher would have had a bunch of screenplay credits before she passed away, because she was also a script doctor. My guess is probably dialogue. But from a pacing and character standpoint, it definitely feels like a Crichton project. Just the way the characters interact, some of the similar tropes, definitely has his stamp on it. It's not to the same level as, say, Jurassic Park, but it's there. And, of course, the fact that this is a film that was produced by Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment, you also got that same type of feel. Which, an interesting little note is that Warner Brothers and Universal helped with the financing, which led to this interesting relationship, that Warner Brothers has the North American distribution rights, where Universal has the international. Not the first time something confusing like that would happen, and it's not going to be the last. It also explains why we have scenes from films from both of those companies in here, like The Shining. Mark Mancina's score was pretty good, definitely fit the tone of the film and varied throughout the scenes to where you don't think anything is clashing. I don't remember any of the notes, note for note, to be able to hum it back to you, but it definitely fitted. Might want to give it a couple listens independently, see how I feel that way. Of course, he's an action score person. I mean, just look at this list of credits. Days of Thunder, Speed, Con Air, Bad Boys, Training Day. There's that, but he can also do other good scores. Like, he did help Hans Zimmer with the score for The Lion King, mainly background stuff like arrangement and some additional music. And then he adapted that score for the Broadway version of it. And he also has a couple other co-writing credits for other Disney films like Brother Bear and Moana. So it just shows he's a bit versatile when it comes to his score usage. Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, they're perfect as the leads. Helen Hunt, both in look and how she plays it, definitely fits the type of female lead that Crichton writes. Then again, I'm basing that a little bit on Laura Dern from Jurassic Park, which is interesting considering Laura Dern was offered this role. Now, I can kind of see why she would turn it down, because it is a little too similar to her character in Jurassic Park, other than the differing background. I could see it. Some actors would be like, I don't want to play that type of character again. Then you get other actors who are like, really, I love playing that type of character. I'm thinking of Vincent Price would say that. Of course I would play the character. I love playing in these horror films. And Bill Paxton, great. You don't really see Bill Paxton in lead roles that often. Most of the time he's usually a background character, but very memorable. I mean, Aliens. Enough said. So it was a nice change of pace to see him in a lead role. If there's any other leads he's in, let me know, because I'd love to actually see other films where he's a lead in. And part of the reason he is a lead, we could thank his old buddy James Cameron for him, because he recommended him. And part of the reason he recommended him is that he has that everyman Southern vibe about him. And while he doesn't have a Southern accent, looking at him and the way he carries himself, I can see that. And for a film that's set in Oklahoma involving twisters, you kind of need an everyman vibe. And it's interesting to see who he beat out for the role. We have Tom Hanks, who was offered it first, and he actually did some wardrobe fittings before he turned it down. Considering where he was in his career at this point, I could see why he decided to turn it down. Because he had other projects to do. I don't remember what he was filming around this time, but this was post-Philadelphia when this film was shot. So it was at the height of his Oscar thing. Then after the years, he got back-to-back Oscar nominations, so he probably had other projects he'd prefer to do. Ones that had more dramatic and character potential. To say what you will about the lead, there's really not a lot of dramatic thing there. It's, you know, compared to some other films, it is a little bit easier to play, other than the action bits. And I can see why Hank would probably turn that down. The other two, though, I could kind of see from the same vibe why they would turn it down, but at the same time, it would have been fun to see him do it. Of course, that's Kurt Russell and Michael Keaton. Snake Plissken and Batman themselves. That would have been interesting. Of course, Russell, I think he was doing some other stuff at the same time, and Keaton, that's an enigma why he would turn it down, but probably because it's like, giant tornado, now pass. And probably also considering how, since it's a Warner Brothers production, considering how they were changing about this time with the Batman films, I could see why he would have been like, no, thank you. Because he probably would imagine, like, they're going to make Twister action figures now. That would have been interesting, you know, like Michael Keaton Twister action figures. Put them next to my Batman action figure. But yeah, Paxton was perfect. Now we go to Carrie Elwes as Dr. Miller. Perfect casting as our human bad guy. And even more so, just like with Bill Paxton, we don't see him in any lead roles. Cary, I can't really think of that many films or TV shows where he's played the bad guy. Just think about it. This is the same guy that played the lead character in The Princess Bride and Robin Hood Men in Tights. Both swashbuckling-like films. He's got that vibe, he's got that accent, and even when he puts on a more American voice, like in Saw and in the episode of SVU he's in, he's not really the bad guy. He's more a gray character there, to where you like him, but you see his flaws, but it doesn't mean that he should be punished the way he is. Like, I mean, he's part of the most memorable moment in the first Saw film. I mean, the only film I could think of off the top of my head were, besides this, where you kind of question the person a lot. Don't remember the name of it, but it's that one involving the questionable relationship with the minor. But I don't remember enough about that film to call it one way or another. I just remember that aspect of it. This is the only film where he's a straight up bastardo. A punk that you want to smack upside the face. And he plays the smugness so good. So when he gets his comeuppance at the end, you go, but it's like, well, it's kind of warranted. I mean, only in it for the money. He was stealing their research. As a certain comic book movie now would say, you get what you deserve. The rest of the cast do a pretty good job as well. But watching it, there was one in the background, the one that played Dusty, that caught my eye. I'm like, wait a minute, is that who I think it is? Google real quick. Yeah, it is. It is Philip Seymour Hoffman, one of his earlier roles before he broke out. Not really much about his character, but he is memorable. And that's one thing to say about the writing of the characters in this film, is that they're not very deep, but the way they are played by their actors and how the shots are set up around them make them stand out. So it's one where the acting and the charm of the actors compensates for the lack of depth. But then again, it is a movie about tornadoes. You're not really looking for like super deep characters and acting here. I mean, you'll find films that are action-oriented where you have some depth, RoboCop, but that's more from how the director directs it, not from the writing. It's the interpretation of the writing, not the writing itself. Here, the deepest thing you get is Joe's motivation, the whole thing about her father's death and wanting to figure stuff out. Of course, with that, it makes it seem like she's holding a grudge against all tornadoes, which, if you want to look at it from a psychological standpoint, you could probably read a lot into that. The film got mixed reviews from critics. I read through a lot of them just to get the snippets. This one from Ebert probably sums up the more negative aspect of it, but gives you a little insight into how critics viewed the film. You want loud, dumb, skillful, escapist entertainment? Twister works. You want to think? Think twice about seeing it. Now, the last part kind of ties in with what I just said. It's not very deep, and it is escapist entertainment. But the way it's worded, it's like, really? Not every film has to be super deep. I think a lot of times critics do forget that. Ebert especially, because he seems to really... Both him and his partner always seem to enjoy the films that are more about depth, and when they do like one that's pure escapism, it surprises me a bit. And they always will work in backhanded comments like that. Film is both art and entertainment. Personally, my favorites are the ones that can balance both. RoboCop, Total Recall, perfectly balanced both. You can say even The Empire Strikes Back balances both. I mean, not to say I don't like ones that favor one way or the other, but sometimes you can get a film that is more about the art that you're just sitting there like, and then of course you get one that goes too far the other way entertainment wise. You're like, that was cool, but that was so stupid. Oh my god. And that could be for intentional purposes or unintentional reason, like, really? That looks so fake. Or, what the hell were they thinking? To various degrees. This one, it's more in the escapism thing, but like I said, the thing with Hunt's character, there is enough deepness there to where it's enough for this type of film. So that's the backhanded insult. Another reason I don't really agree with a lot of the film critics. However, that is compensated for a little bit by the fact that it got 2 Academy Award nominations, like I mentioned at the beginning of this review, for visual effects and best sound, and those 2 are well warranted. Of course, it lost both of them, as you can probably get from the nominations part. It lost the visual effects one to Independence Day. If you're going to lose them to anyone that year, you might as well lose it to a good film like that, which that one I did see in theaters. And it lost Best Sound to The English Patient. I have not seen that film, so that has me scratching my head like, how did The English Patient win? One of these days I'll watch it and then I'll give my verdict on it. But that strikes me as one that they went more with the more artsy-like film instead of giving it to the one that it probably should have deserved it more. Now we come to the part of the review where I go over some interesting trivia. I mean, there's a lot of trivia on IMDb for it, so these are the ones I pick and choose. Now we come to the part of the review where I go over some interesting IMDb trivia. I didn't put all of it here because it's just one page, obviously. But I skimmed through what's on there and I picked up the ones that I thought were the most interesting. Here we go. Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton were blinded by electrical lighting halfway through filming. And of course they had to take some time off to heal. And they adjusted the setup after that. But it's like, yeah, it must have been a bright light. And in another incident, Hunt was injured by a truck door while they were filming the corn driving sequence. After that, they decided we're going to have something strap the door closed so something like this doesn't happen again. This was the first movie released on DVD, and it was the last one released on HD DVD. Nice little distinction there. The recording of a camel's moan was slowed down and used as a tornado. That's a common film device, take animal sounds, remix them, change it up, and use them for different purposes. I mean, a lot of the dinosaur sounds in Jurassic Park are just that, which work. But the fact that they used a camel's moan, it's like, I mean, it's the right deepness, so I can imagine them taking it, putting through different modulators, and then running it through, and then getting the right pitch. In a screening Q&A, Paxton said that he did not meet Steven Spielberg until 1.5 years after filming wrapped, and this is what he was greeted with. Thanks for making me a lot of money. Since Spielberg was the producer, thanks to Amblin Entertainment, I can see why he'd say that. Now, depending on the tone of how he said that, you could say that that's either a dick move or just Spielberg, being, hey, nice to meet you. Thank you for making that film for me. And considering a lot of the stories you hear about Spielberg, I can see either being correct. It's just one of those interesting ones, like, huh? But that's Hollywood. Of course, there's some other obvious jokes you can put in there, but I'm not going to make any of them because that's low-hanging fruit. Spielberg, speaking of him, he's the one that suggested the drive-in scene, because probably another little change on the fly. That originally, it was supposed to be the crew going to go see a movie and then hearing about what happened to Joe's aunt's house. And that's a good scene later on where they find the house in disarray and then they get her out before the house fully collapses. Now, they turn that into the action sequence where the tornado comes and rips apart the drive-in, which is a great scene because they're watching The Shining at the drive-in, which would be an interesting film to see at the drive-in. And then as the tornado's coming in, when Jack Nicholson's taking the axe to the door, which is a nice little shot. You see the axe and you see the tornado coming across the screen. Now, the reason he suggested that is that without it, dramatically slowed down the movie. That's his line. It dramatically slowed down the movie. Which I can see why, that without that film, from the previous one to the next one, the film does kind of slow down a little bit and take a breather. And with how this film is paced, that definitely would have slowed everything down. It would have been a nice little calm before the big storm at the end. But since this film all takes place in the 24-hour period, having all these tornadoes back-to-back like that, and them going from one to another, I like the rapid-fire pace of it. It definitely helps the tone and pace of the film, so it's a right call there. Overall, Twister is a very fun film. The direction is solid. The cast give great, charming performances. It's nice to see Bill Paxton in a leading role. The special effects are great, even though there are a couple moments that have aged a little bit, like the cow, but for mid-90s CGI, they still hold up pretty well. And the human villain, smug, the right type of villain for this film. The pace, like I just said, once everything picks up, it goes. There's like small interruptions before the next storm. It's paced perfectly. It is the perfect 90s blockbuster popcorn film. And if I ever do get a chance to see this one on the big screen, I will. It definitely comes with my recommendation if you haven't seen it. Just know going in, this is a film that is more entertainment than art. But it still is art in and of itself with how the film is constructed for entertainment.